Hello, everybody. My name is Natalie Thompson, and I am the Registrar at the Augusta Museum of History. And just thank you for everybody who's watching with us today. And I'm excited to share with you some of the collections at the museum that may not be seen very often. This is the final lecture of a very successful and interesting series on the foodways of the central Savannah River area. So thank you, Harvey White, and just the museum for putting this on for the last year. But my talk today will be about specific food-related objects that the museum has in its collections. A good number are actually on exhibit, so if you get the chance to visit our galleries, you'll see some, in particular in Augusta Story. But I've also pulled objects from our collection storage for you today as well. It's going to be a little bit of a mixture of those two things. And honestly, just so you have an idea, we're going to be going kind of thematically through the objects because food, as we all know, covers a very wide range of topics and just infiltrates so much of our culture. So it's going to be kind of a lot to cover. So I'm sorry if there's any awkward transitions. We're just going to try to get through as much as we can in this time period. So first off, I want to talk about some of our Native American collections. The majority of our objects actually are from before European colonization, and we do have several cooking implements on exhibit. Again, that's in Augusta Story at the beginning of the gallery. And many of the objects actually that are on exhibit in our collection are from the Stallings Island people. And the Stallings Island is actually a renowned archaeological site in its own right. And the people were very influential in the Southeast during the late Archaic period, which was about 3000 to 1000 BC. But notably, the Stallings Island people were the first to decorate pottery. And a lot of the objects on exhibit are different pottery sherds and things like that, so you can see examples of different types of decorated pottery. Besides their pottery, we do have other cooking implements on exhibit, including things called boiling stones, which would have been added to pots of liquid, and they would have been heated up, then added to the pot to slowly cook the liquid inside. And usually that would be stews or something along those lines. Beyond boiling stones, we also have a lot of things used for hunting game out, which most of you will know projectile points, but we also have some fish hooks, as well as throwing spears, also known as atlatls. And actually, before the pandemic began, back in February, Chef Dave McCluskey spoke a great deal about Southeastern indigenous food history. And then actually even in January, Dr. Leanne Caldwell spoke on pre-colonization food history in her lecture there. So next up topic, just kind of abruptly switching from Native American, now to our business history in the museum collection. We do have a good amount of archives and photographs that relate to different businesses in the CSRA. And of particular interest today, I've actually pulled a good number of menus and matchbooks because they highlight restaurants over our history here. So the reason why I pulled menus is because I honestly find them fascinating. You can see exactly what a restaurant was serving on a certain day, depending on how exacting the menu is, just at different times in history, which I think is really cool. For example, the first menu I have here is from January 29th of 1880, and it was used at the Augusta Hotel, which was at 607 Broad Street. And then this next menu was created for Thanksgiving Day, November 24th, 1904, to be served at the Albion Hotel. And it appears to be a very elaborate meal. There were such things as broiled Spanish mackerel, Vermont stuffed turkey with chestnuts, champagne jelly, to name a few. And then each of those courses would have had their own drink to go with it. And then quite different, we have this Thanksgiving menu, but it was for the USS Augusta, and that was in 1942. So again, with menus, you can really see different meals that were served, not just different places, but also different times and different circumstances between having a very elaborate menu at a hotel versus during the middle of wartime on a ship. And the last menu I pulled is from the Joy Young Chinese restaurant, And the Joy Young was one of the earliest Chinese restaurants in Augusta. It was founded in the mid-1930s. Originally over on 801 9th Street, but it moved to 506 9th in the mid-1950s before it actually closed in 2003. After the menus, I also pulled, like I said, some matchbooks. While not as common today, matchbooks were used as like a sort of souvenir at a lot of restaurants. And just little fun facts about them. They were actually originally used as an advertising medium back in 1902 for PBR was the first one to do that. So Pabst Brewing Company introduced us to the matchbook as we know it. But then actually in 1973, federal safety laws made it so that the striker had to be moved from the front to the back. So that's a dating if you have an old matchbook. If the striker is on the back, it's post-1973. So I just brought several of them out so you can just kind of look at them, see different restaurants over time in Augusta. The next type of object I have pulled are cookbooks. And we do have a range of cookbooks in our collection, and I think these are both interesting as a historic object, but also for their contents. Researchers can use cookbooks to see how certain dishes were made in the past, as well as what was popular enough to even make it into a cookbook. My favorite are local cookbooks, and that's what I pulled for you today. We do have some more nationally known cookbooks, but when you get the local ones, you actually have a member of the historic community, and that was their recipe. So you can get to know more about that person and even, what they would have served on their dinner table. So local cookbooks here today. The first one I have is loose pages now. Originally, I believe it would have been bound together, but it was compiled between 1866 and 1900. So it originally belonged to a Miss Helen J. Cooper of Augusta, and she started to compile them in March of 1866. And I was looking at our record, and it noticed that she got married in May of that same year to a Gilbert Lafayette McMurphy. So you could kind of assume that she might have been compiling these recipes beginning it because she knew she was about to get married, and that would have been her role in that time period as kind of a homemaker to serve food for her new family. We also have a few locally compiled church cookbooks in our collection. And cookbooks have often been used as a fundraiser for different organizations, and that's what these were. So the first I have is from the youth group of Trinity on the Hill Methodist Church in Augusta. That one was done in 1991. And then the other one I have here is from 1946, and it was from the Daughters of Israel. Includes kosher recipes mixed in actually with local advertisements. So just the different sponsors for it. So you not only get these recipes, but you also have a little bit of an idea of other local businesses mixed in as well. And then the last cookbook I have pulled is the favorite recipes of the Augusta Chinese community, which was published in 2006, actually the second edition of that cookbook. And that is of note. We do collect things from a little bit more recent history. So 2006 now has been 14 years, so it's not quite as recent. But all of that is part of the story of this region, and that's what we do here at the museum is interpret the story of the CSRA. So yeah, cookbooks. By following in the recipes in these books, you'll be able to recreate the very same meal that somebody many years ago enjoyed, which I find very cool. But really, those pages are a direct connection to history. And then speaking of home cooking, we also have a large variety of aprons, as well as other textiles. But I pulled actually 2 aprons from our collection, just so you can see the difference. Its common accessory can be depending on the occasion it was used at. So first I have an 1895 brown linen apron, which was hand embroidered by a Miss Waltz. According to our records, she said that she had to stitch it by the light of a pine knot because her father was too stingy to buy kerosene for the lamp. but I think she still did a very good job. I definitely could not have stitched that by kerosene or pine knot light. And the next one I have, this black one, is from 1950, and it was made specifically for entertaining. So definitely not for kitchen use. But it's black satin with an eyelet pattern, and then embroidered with flowers, and has black lace surrounding it. Then up next, I have some historic cookware and eating implements. While the methods of cooking have changed over time, a lot of the cooking instruments actually look really similar over the years. So we do have this bottle here. It is from 1737, and it would have either held rum or wine, but it was from Fort Moore, discovered in an archaeological site. Fort Moore was across the Savannah River in South Carolina, and it was there up until Augusta just outgrew South Carolina, so the fort eventually shut down. But just a little fun fact, I believe Dr. Caldwell spoke on this back in January, but originally Georgia was established as a dry colony, so alcohol was illegal for the first 12 years, and since we were founded in 1733, if that bottle had come across the river at any point, it would have been, basically it would have been illegal. So next I have a couple of different plates from our collection. First one is this 1865 chinchillaware plate, and I pulled this one just because of the provenance of it, so the history behind it. It was actually given to Jefferson Davis in the spring of 1865 by Mrs. Lafayette McLaws of Washington, Georgia, when he came through that area. So not only did it technically belong to Davis, but it was given to him just a handful of months, possibly, before he surrendered to the U.S. Army, and actually was part of his mess kit that he carried from then on. The next plate was a children's plate. It's made of tin and has a little bit of a coloring to it, but around the edge you can see it has the alphabet, and in the center a portrait relief of George Washington. But it belonged to an Orland K. Fletcher, who was born in 1873, and he lived till 1937. So this plate would have been used over a century ago by a small child. And actually, I pick it up and it is sturdy. So children's plates, even back then, were made do not break, because kids will break plates. And then, of course, the plates are meant for eating your food, but they also, a lot of times, are used for commemorative occasions. And that's what this last one was. It was a 1930s plate made to commemorate Georgia's bicentennial. And it features Richmond Academy at the center of the plate. It's the oldest existing high school in America. So that's very fun. We also have some cooking technology in our collection, including this 1950s Hamilton Beach electric stand mixer. As a quick side note on that, actually, at the start of the new year, the museum will be putting on a temporary exhibit, but that will be showcasing mid-19th century household technology. And that's actually going to be curated by a collections intern named Alina Wrench. So come back and see that after the start of the new year. But I think actually this mixer will be on exhibit as well as other pieces. And it is quite similar to mixers today. It's a little more Airstream style, but it would definitely get the job done. And while this object next wouldn't have been used for everyday baking, like our stand mixer, many of you will be familiar with it. The Easy Bake Oven introduced a lot of children to baking once it was invented in 1963. The one that we have pulled here today is from 1996 and looks remarkably similar to the one that I had as a child, which I enjoy using all the time. Then the last type of cooking implements I have pulled are from our military history collection. And we have some different cookware from both World Wars. The first is from 1917, and it's called a meat can. but it has two parts to it. There's a pan and a lid, and actually the lid, once you finish cooking, could then be used as a plate. And the other one is from World War II. It's the U.S. Army mess kit, which would have had the pan, but also plate, fork, and spoon in it. And this particular kit belonged to a man named William Harvey, and you can actually see that he painted his name on the kit in red. And then kind of to wrap up, we have several different images from our photography collection that of course relate to food, but photographs really are incredibly helpful when interpreting history because you can actually see people from the past engaging with these historic objects. For example, this first image is from 1918, and it's a soldier holding his mess kit in Koblenz, Germany. And you can see that the kit he's using is really very similar to the ones that we have in our collection. The next image I have for you is from circa 1920, and it just shows two men, Charlie Pappas and then Henry Van Diver, who's in the back, inside of a restaurant that was on 13th Street. It appears that these two men worked in this restaurant. Another image of a restaurant, this one's from the exterior, but it was the Busy Bee Cafe and Restaurant on Broad Street, and that's from 1959. And then we have next is an image of people eating inside of a tented area. This photo was taken at the Bettis Academy, which is in Edgefield County, and it was taken during an Independence Day celebration. And the food looks very good. But then this following photograph is of Big Star Grocery, which was on 9th and Green Streets in Augusta. And you can see how they created their displays and all the different types of food that they had available when this photograph was taken. And then this final photograph is from inside Bowen Pinewood Shop. And you can see the aisles of pots and pans that were available for purchase back when the photo was taken in 1954. So these are just some of the items from the museum's collection that relate to food. We have objects that were used in food production, archives that describe meals made at local restaurants, historic recipes, and photographs of people throughout history. So thank you again for joining me today. If you do have any questions for me, my email can be found on our museum's website. And I just appreciate your time.